The Velari didn't feel anything. That their logic-based culture had purged emotional instability from their genetics millennia ago. No tears, no laughter, no hesitation, no joy. They functioned, they obeyed, they progressed. On paper, they were perfect. And yet, to Dr. Alan Royce, they seemed incomplete. He'd watched them speak with precision, move with efficiency, respond with clinical indifference to joy and tragedy alike. To a human, it was eerie. To Royce, it was a puzzle. He'd come to the Velari homeworld not as a diplomat or a soldier, but as a xenobiologist, one of the few authorized to run interspecies neurogenetic studies under the Interstellar Peace Accord. He hadn't come looking for emotions. He'd come looking for dormant genes, remnants, traces of something ancient and forgotten. What he found was far more dangerous. Lysra wasn't supposed to be interesting. Assigned to him as a translator and scientific liaison, she was a Velari ideal, calm, intelligent, impossibly poised. Her voice was always steady, her gaze unblinking. She recorded data, synthesized notes, and answered every question with the mechanical elegance of a machine. Royce, by contrast, was chaos. He spoke with his hands, smiled too much, and laughed at things no Velari found amusing. And Lysra, frustratingly, never reacted, until she did. It started when he asked an unauthorized question, not about her biology, about her. Did she ever wonder what emotions felt like? Her answer was immediate. No, but her hesitation, the microsecond delay before she spoke, told him otherwise. Velari didn't hesitate. That night, he stayed awake, replaying the interaction over and over, combing through decades-old medical scans, ancient Velari myths, and a few scraps of untranslated neurocodex. Something wasn't adding up. What if the Velari hadn't evolved past emotion, but buried it, genetically silenced it to maintain order? There were hints. Ancient legends of the burning faces, stories Velari children whispered but scientists ignored, a physiological reaction no one admitted seeing, a flush of color in the cheeks, warmth in the face. Blushing, Royce was obsessed. It took him 4 months to develop the serum, synthesized from dormant neuroreceptor analogs found in Velari DNA. It wasn't supposed to create emotion, only reactivate what had been shut down. He called it NERS, Neuroempathic Emotional Restoration Serum. No human lab would approve it. No Velari doctor would even acknowledge it. But he wasn't asking for permission. Lysra was the only one he trusted, the only one who might say yes. He presented his findings, careful not to show excitement. She listened, expressionless, but he saw it, the flicker of curiosity. When he explained the concept of emotional reawakening, she didn't scoff. She asked what it would feel like. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked if she wanted to find out. She agreed under one condition: no documentation, no witnesses, no records. If it worked, it would be a private phenomenon. If it failed, it would be forgotten. The serum was colorless, odorless, delivered via microinjection at the base of the neck. She took it without flinching, her face blank as ever. There was no immediate reaction. She said nothing. He waited. Minutes passed. Hours. Nothing. Disappointment crept in. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe the Velari had truly evolved beyond humanity's primitive wiring. The next day, everything changed. She arrived at the lab as usual, early, crisp, efficient. But when she looked at him, her expression flickered. She blinked twice, then turned away. Her hand trembled as she picked up her datapad. Royce asked if she felt all right. Her answer came late. Too late for a Velari. Yes, I am optimal. He noticed the tint on her cheeks. Subtle, barely perceptible, a shade too warm for Velari skin tones. He said nothing. As she worked, she began making errors. Minor, but inconsistent with her record. She dropped the data crystal, misquoted a line of protein sequence. When he leaned over to correct her, her posture tensed. Her eyes avoided his. She left early. The following morning, she didn't show up. Instead, a message: I require a temporary leave for introspection. Velari didn't introspect. They didn't take leave. Royce knew something had triggered, and he might have broken her. He waited 3 days. When she returned, she didn't speak at first. She simply entered the lab, stood in front of him, and asked a single question. "What have you done to me?" Her voice trembled. Royce explained everything. The genes, the dormant receptors, the serum's function. She listened, hands clenched behind her back. Then she asked what emotion meant, how it worked, what blushing was. He showed her images, human anatomy, diagrams of capillary dilation. Then he showed her human art, faces flushed with embarrassment, desire, shame, joy. She stared at each one as if reading ancient scripture. "Which one am I experiencing?" she asked. "Only you can answer that." She turned away, but not before he saw her face deepen in hue. From that day forward, she changed. She laughed once. It startled both of them. It was small, quiet, but undeniably laughter. It escaped during a conversation about human mating rituals, of all things. She covered her mouth and excused herself. The door closed behind her with uncharacteristic haste. She apologized later. Royce told her she didn't have to. She argued that loss of control was unacceptable. He reminded her it was human. Over the next few weeks, the symptoms escalated. She began stammering during discussions, avoiding eye contact, displaying what humans would call nervous tics, adjusting her collar, touching her face, fidgeting with tools. She started requesting breaks, said her thoughts were disordered. Royce began keeping private notes. He wasn't documenting her out of duty anymore. He was trying to understand her, help her, because what was happening wasn't just neurological. It was personal. She was becoming someone else, or rather, someone her kind hadn't been in thousands of years. One night, long after they should have closed the lab, she remained, staring at the galaxy map projected across the ceiling. Roy stood beside her, watching. "Is it permanent?" she asked. "I don't know. I feel exposed." "You don't have to be afraid of that." "I am not afraid." She turned, her voice rising. "I am something, but I do not have the words." Roy stepped closer. "You're feeling. That's all. That's what it is. Real, messy, and it's okay." She turned away again. Her face was nearly glowing. "It is difficult." "Good things usually are." She looked at him. There was a pause, a breath too long. Then she said something no Velari had uttered in recorded history. "I think I like you." The silence that followed was heavier than gravity. He didn't know what to say. He didn't need to. She had already disappeared into the corridor, leaving only the faint scent of the serum and the weight of her confession behind. The hearing was scheduled within 2 cycles of Lysera's return. Royce was invited. He wouldn't be permitted to defend her, nor would his presence be tolerated in any capacity. Velari protocol barred emotional contamination from influencing judicial process. But she had taken the serum, and the evidence was now written into her very physiology. It couldn't be denied. He followed the reports from a distance, what little he could intercept through secondary sources and off-world colleagues. Officially, the council was convening to discuss biological anomaly and procedural deviation. Unofficially, it was an inquiry into the reintroduction of a trait their species had eradicated generations ago. Fear disguised as science. Lysera's testimony was sealed. No broadcasts. No recordings. Royce didn't hear her voice for 12 days. Not a single message. Not even a sign she was still at the Institute. He wasn't even sure if she was free. On the 13th day, a courier brought him a cube. Not a Velari communication device. An ancient Terran artifact. Wood. Brass. Handmade. It contained no data, just a folded strip of paper. Her handwriting was awkward, as if she'd practiced it without ever needing it before. It said only this: "They don't understand what it means to feel, but I do now, and I will not let them erase it again." Royce gripped the message so tightly the edges curled under his fingers. She had made a choice, but in Velari culture, that choice would be treated as a disease. Then came the purge orders. Every recorded experiment, all his serum logs, every interaction note, all requested for deletion. The scientific authority labeled NEERS a contaminant, an unlawful biological agent with the potential to undermine the cultural equilibrium of the Velari people. Royce refused. The demand escalated. His access codes were revoked. His permissions terminated. Surveillance drones monitored his quarters. His off-world clearance was suspended. The message was clear: comply or disappear. He made his decision the moment he read her letter. That night, under a cascade of firewalls and cloaking layers, he triggered the data dispersion protocol. NEERS wouldn't die. He buried fragments across 3 systems. Hidden inside medical algorithms, art subroutines, even within the rhythm patterns of a Velari music archive. It was no longer one file. It was everywhere, scattered like seeds. He backed up Lysera's neurological scan, her vitals, her post-serum changes, not to exploit her, but to protect her, to preserve proof. Because the Council wasn't just preparing to erase the science. They were preparing to erase her. The Council issued its final decree behind closed doors. Lysera was to be reprocessed, not eliminated. Death would make her a martyr, but reprogramming would make her disappear. Royce was to be erased from public record. His existence, they declared, was a variable outside natural Velari evolution, not a man, a virus. But history had other plans. 3 days after the decree, a young Velari student on a colony moon uploaded a 3-minute holovid of herself blinking uncontrollably while reading a letter from an off-world pen pal. Her skin flushed. Her pulse spiked. She laughed, choked, confused, but undeniably real. 12 million viewed the clip in the first hour. By day's end, 50 other Velari posted similar recordings. Not protest, not rebellion, just truth. Their bodies were changing. Their minds expanding. The emotion suppression systems weren't working. The Serum had seeded itself into the future. The Council ordered full neurological lockdown in select cities, mandatory screenings, memory edits, emotional dampeners calibrated to maximum tolerance. It wasn't enough. The data leaks multiplied. Private conversations turned into group awakenings. Entire classrooms began experiencing spontaneous empathy surges. One group reportedly spent an entire lecture embracing, overwhelmed by a collective sense of wonder. The old order fractured. Some clung tighter to control, reinforcing protocol, reviving doctrines from before the great equilibrium. Others defected. Doctors, instructors, engineers, once emotionless, now weeping as they read ancient Terran poetry aloud in secret forums. A civilization built on sterilized precision now found itself shaken by the unpredictable rhythm of a heartbeat. From his holding cell, Royce learned all of this through fractured channels. A captured guard with a sympathetic look. A technician who left his console unlocked for 30 silent seconds. Whispers traveled like sparks, and every whisper carried Lysera's name. Emberface. She wasn't just the first. She was the proof. She was moved to a high-orbit isolation array. Artificial gravity, no windows, complete neural sedation. The Council had failed to cleanse her. Now they sought to contain her like unstable energy. But Lysera's mind, altered as it was, had found paths even sedation couldn't sever. They underestimated what NEERS had done. She wasn't just emotional. She was evolving. Her synaptic networks had rewired, enabling conscious memory partitioning, emotional anchoring, and mental resistance to external sedation pulses. Her dreams remained lucid. She could still hear Royce's voice in the quiet folds of her mind. She held on to it like a gravity well. She waited, and others were waiting too. An entire faction of Velari researchers, exiled after being caught with Royce's NEERS fragments, were operating in silence across 2 fringe moons. They called themselves the Renewal. They had no leader. No formal plan, only a single goal: make the feeling permanent. They had data. They had bioreplicators. But they needed Lysera. She was a final key. They orchestrated the breach in less than 90 seconds. Ion drift, solar flare masking, pulse jammer deployed at the edge of the orbital field. The Council security grid faltered for the briefest moment. It was enough. She was extracted without a word exchanged. The technician escorting her defected mid-mission. She left sedation behind like an old skin. When Roy saw her again, he couldn't speak. Her eyes were brighter, her pulse audible. She radiated heat in waves. Every step she took made the air feel heavier, not because she was dangerous, because she was undeniable. "I dreamed of you," she said. He whispered, "I never stopped waiting." They didn't embrace. They didn't cry, but both trembled, and in that trembling, they rewrote what it meant to be alive. The renewal documented every moment. Lysra submitted willingly. Her brain scans, her pulse readings, her subjective experiences. Every data point fed into an evolving model. What they discovered shifted everything. The serum had not merely restored emotion, it had built a bridge. Lysra could transmit her emotional state, not telepathically, biochemically, visually, orally. A flush, a breath, a microexpression, a hum. And Velari, who were exposed to her, began to synchronize, not perfectly, but enough to begin the cascade. Emotion as signal, feeling as language. The Velari weren't just rediscovering emotion. They were developing a new system of communication, richer and faster than anything their sterile protocols had ever permitted. Within a week, 50 more subjects joined, then 200, and then it became irreversible. Velari across 5 systems experienced what can be called the wave. Mass sympathy events, simultaneous outpourings of sensation that defied explanation, instructors breaking down mid-lecture, pilots laughing uncontrollably during flight calibration, infants weeping in synchronized patterns that matched ancient human lullaby tones. The council crumbled under the pressure, not from war, from irrelevance. Their doctrine no longer applied. Their language no longer resonated. Their words, sterile, cold, precise, had lost power. What do numbers mean to a people rediscovering music? In desperation, they issued one last decree: ban all human interaction, purge all Terran influence, isolate the systems. The galaxy laughed, because it was too late. Lysra's image had crossed borders. Royce's research was taught in hidden chambers. Music from Earth played in converted Velari chambers once meant for logic drills. Then, a signal arrived from deep space, not from Earth, from an old Terran AI probe, drifting near the galactic fringe. It had intercepted the resurgence of human emotional signature patterns among the Velari and recognized a harmonic match. It spoke a single sentence. "We remember you." Lysra responded with 5 words. "I remember what we forgot." The AI replied with coordinates. It was a vault, buried on an unregistered asteroid, a backup library from before Earth's collapse, containing sensory data, cultural history, emotional records, tactile archives, art, stories, music, scent patterns, genetic memories. The Velari opened it, and everything changed. Their youth bathed in human art like newborns tasting sunlight. Ancient lullabies restored from lost Terran cradles. Love letters that bled ink with the ache of longing. Memories encoded in piano strings and brushstrokes and heartbeat rhythms. Lysra became the first Velari to cry, not from sadness, from awe. Roy stood beside her, watching as a civilization once defined by control learned to unravel and reform through vulnerability. They didn't need to fight anymore. The council dissolved silently, its members fleeing or fading into obscurity. No arrests, no trials, just an old system left behind like a forgotten shell. New leaders emerged, chosen not for their logic, but their empathy, not for detachment, but for their capacity to feel deeply and guide others through it. Royce declined all positions. He was offered citizenship, worship, even sainthood in one cultural offshoot. He said no, because he knew this wasn't about him. It was about her, and what she symbolized.